Hey everyone, welcome back to Yuri's Box. In this video, I'm going to go over the data drops we had since Monday. If you like this kind of content, consider leaving a like. And as usual, nothing in this video is to be considered financial advice. So we had some more data come out since my last video on Monday. We had the Institute for Supply Management come out on Wednesday for services and manufacturing. I'm going to quickly gloss over them. It really came out in contrast to the S&P Global report that we had in February. And I think that overall, if you put the two together, you kind of come out with an average. I think the best summary of it all is things are okay, and the big reason why is because we have a lot of pull forward from the tariffs. There is a lot more uncertainty going forward, and this is something that is consistent with both reports. Okay, like if you look at what respondents are saying, it really goes along that theme. Services came a little bit better than expected, same as manufacturing. Then on Wednesday we had also the ADP, ADP employment report, which came in light. The market really didn't seem to care that much about this number, and I really can't blame it because honestly, the ADP number has, generally speaking, it's best if you take it with a grain of salt. And here as well, I'm not so worried about the number itself. I'm looking more at the comments around it, and I think that again, the theme of uncertainty is a dominant theme right now. You really don't have any clear indication of what the future is going to be, and that it's by itself is a drag. Okay, because when you don't know what your future framework is going to be, you really can't make decisions. So this is how the employment shifted according to ADP. Again, I don't usually put too much weight. And again, I said in one of my last videos that I wouldn't really be get too excited about the ADP report. But it is what it is, and take it for what it's worth. Again, if you go and look through history, it doesn't really have that much correlation with the non-farm payrolls number. You shouldn't read too much into it. That's at least that's my experience with it. Today, what I was waiting for is the final read for initial jobless claims and continuing claims. And we came in at 221K. That is kind of smack in the middle of my personal range of 215 to 220 on jobless claims, which is kind of more or less, again, my kind of break-even point. Okay, that's what I call it. Whenever you see something and jobless claims come above 220, you can start making the case that an unemployment rate will somewhat go up. And whenever you see it go below that number, that threshold, you could easily make the case for the unemployment rate to go down, as well as jobless claims came out. We also had continuing claims, which spiked up to 1.9 million. Again, historically speaking, we're still speaking of a very low number. Okay, relative to recent history, this is just another indication of the fact that if you're losing a job, it's harder and harder to find a job. So people are staying unemployed for longer. And to kind of go along with that, we had also the Challenger Gray job cuts get reported, which saw quite a dramatic increase from at least from last month, and on a historical basis, we had 172 job cuts. Again, also, if you're not following them on Twitter, they're one of my favorite accounts on X, and they're Macro Edge. There's their X handle in my bio below, and they had something like 155k job cuts tracked throughout the month. Again, give them a follow because they have the the pulse of the situation. But getting back to the report, you saw job cuts go up. Most of it came from government layoffs and retail. Now, if you, just for some mental gymnastics, if you wanted to take off the government cuts for whatever reason, that still leaves us at around 110k, which is again, on a relative basis, is still pretty elevated. Okay, only in January 2023 we went over 100k. The rest has been fairly muted. So by itself, it is a significant report. Of course, you can't discount the government cuts, and the reason why is really, again, something I said in my previous videos. The reason why you have to pay attention to any federal workers getting laid off isn't so much because the initial jobless claims can go up, or again this kind of number. It's really more of the fact that a federal a federal employee getting laid off means that his or her salary isn't circulating in the economy anymore. So everything that rotates around it gets cut off as well. So imagine that you have all the services connected to it. If you have contractors that are working with those federal employees, they get the axe as well. Okay, so it's kind of a virus kind of thing. I saw Meet Kevin's video today, and that's one of the ways he described it, and I think that's probably the best way to describe it, because it's kind of, it starts at the federal level, and then it kind of spreads all over. Okay, so imagine that you have, again, a federal office, employees there. If there are employees, you might have restaurants, you might have stores, you might have, again, contractors that are working with those federal employees to enact whatever policy or projects that they come up with. And again, if they get the axe, so does any other person that's collaborating with them. So that is why you really should pay attention to this number here. Now, we kind of had this deluge of data come out, and really the one I'm waiting for is, and I'm honestly, waiting really for, is the jobs report tomorrow. And in my previous videos, I already made the case why I'm not expecting anything too dramatic. I read over the week Anna Wong of Bloomberg Economics make the case for a bust, so even negative non-farm payrolls. Again, I'm just going off the PMI and the ISM reports, and overall, I read uncertainty, and so I think that's what we'll get. I think we'll get a number that is a miss, nothing too dramatic. I said somewhere between 90 and 110k, if I'm not mistaken, and if I had to put a precise number, I would say 105k, and a 4.1 on unemployment rate, which I think is achievable. I wouldn't expect anything major. Again, given the fact that, yes, we had a small uptick in initial jobless claims, which again can indicate the unemployment rate going up by a smidge, but we didn't see anything like, say, July of last year. Okay, so where we had already starting off from 220 and we worked our way up to 250. And so because of that, we also saw the unemployment rate got from 4.1 to 4.3. Now, the big caveat with what I'm saying here with the 4.1, my personal expectations being at 4.1, is if nothing funky happens around with the labor force participation rate. Okay. If this were to spike, if this were to go up for whatever reason, you could see the unemployment rate go up. And if it were to drop, you could see the opposite happen. That's the big caveat with when it comes down to the unemployment rate. Okay. And also, before I close the video, I think that my personal opinion on where we are now is, again, I've made the case in my previous videos that we are no longer in a time where we have any excesses to fall back on. And if you wanted to visualize that, you could pull up the total assets held by the Federal Reserve as kind of a very, very, very large way of summarizing it all. And just by saying, okay, this was the response to the COVID era, to the COVID crisis. And anything above this is kind of all the excess, okay? And we really can see this. If you wanted to kind of give it a name, you could also look at things like quits, which I've talked quite a bit about. We are no longer in at the 2021 highs. We are at 2%, which means that people are no longer seeing all that excess in the economy getting manifested in the way of numerous job openings, meaning that in turn means that it's all a bit more fragile, okay? And it's kind of more, everything is more susceptible to shocks and uncertainty. And that is why I think that right now it doesn't really pay to keep your eyes glued to the tape and the price action and the S&P went down and then it went up on Tuesday. It could have been lower, then it closed closed negative. Then on Wednesday we went up. Today we're kind of flat. Well, down 1%, but I mean, you see a lot of volatility during the day, and I honestly think it doesn't really pay much to, just keep your eyes glued to the screen. The simple reason being that we are in a certain part of the cycle where we really have to. The only thing you can go off of is the data, and I think, just by looking at the price action, that is what the market is doing. Seeing that we don't really have, a certain framework, and looking in the future, we're really susceptible to any shifts in current conditions. Okay, so if you have current conditions deteriorating, so if you have fewer jobs getting created, if you have more job cuts, that is just adding fuel to the uncertainty. So again, you really have to do something that is usually frowned upon, and even I usually advise against, which is look at the data. And really, we are in a time where also politics kind of matters, and that is a big no-no, even in my in the normal playbook, because politics is a nothing burger when it comes in normal times, at least. And you really shouldn't be paying much attention to whatever comes out of politics. Oh, what's going to happen with the debt ceiling? What's going to happen with Congress? It doesn't really matter. But given where we are now, I think that it really pays a lot to to pay attention to all of these different things like economic data and what is coming out of politics, because the reason why we are in this kind of messy situation is because, well, basically tariffs and layoffs. Okay, and those both of those policies are coming from the White House, and only they know if they're going to continue or not. And if they are going to continue, it's going to manifest in the data coming out, and you're likely to see things like hiring slow because people don't really want to make big plans in an uncertain environment. And as far as layoffs are concerned, on the federal side, if this Doge movement continues to bear its fruits, well, again, I defer to what I said before when I was speaking about the challenge of job cuts. If you have federal employees getting laid off, that has an effect on everyone that's connected with those federal employees. Okay, so that really permeates throughout the economy. Again, so again, on the federal side, and then on the private side, the reason why people are more likely to get laid off at this point of the cycle is simply because if you have tariffs, I've made the case that tariffs at this point of the cycle really aren't inflationary. Okay, you will probably see a small bump in inflation, but given where we are, just by looking, it's again my favorite indicator of them all, the quits rate. We are no longer in a situation where people have the tools to at least try and keep up with inflation. Okay. Whenever the quits rate is high, that means that people have the choice between a lot of jobs, and the fact that they have choice means that they can go towards their employer and say, "Hey, buddy, give me a raise," or "I'm switching jobs that will give me a raise." And so again, we no longer have that positive feedback loop, okay, where you have input prices, those prices reaching companies, then companies being able to pass them on to customers, because customers don't have the means to keep up with those prices. So if companies can't pass those prices on to consumers, the only way they're going to safeguard the margin is by laying off people. That's the only thing they can do in a situation like this. So again, you have the saber rattling of tariffs and federal layoffs that are really just pointing you into one direction, and the market, as is really been shouting risk off. Okay, so if those things continue, you have risk off. And again, I'll say the same thing for TLT. Again, this is the framework we are in right now. If these things continue, directionally, it's risk off. And risk off is positive for bonds, directionally, okay? It doesn't mean that we can't have, down days. It doesn't mean that other things can't have their influence on the price action. But like, we've had 3 down days, okay? We went down from 90 to 279 and went down to 90. We breached 90. We went down to 89.73. Again, I've made the case that could we revisit this trend line before? Well, again, could we revisit this trend line? Of course, it's happened before. But does it have to happen? No. And why? Well, because again, wherever we close today, keep in mind that tomorrow we have the non-farm payroll print. And if the non-farm payroll print comes in, negative, well, what do you think is going to happen? Well, bonds are going to rally likely, unless, something else is going on, something weird. But again, that's just to make the point that right now it's not about technical levels, at least in my opinion. It's not a matter of the volumes. It's not a matter of whatever you use. It's a matter um, of something that we're rightly programmed to ignore, which is data and politics. Okay, so again, what really will tell will again will tell you where everything is going to go is the data, and that's the only thing you can do is wait for the data, see how it comes out, and if it's negative, um, again, I expect it to see a miss. The estimate is for, if I'm not mistaken, 150, 150, 160, 160. Okay, 160. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 105, but that's just my opinion. If we were to see any kind of a miss, that would just feed more uncertainty into the system, and so risk off continues. If you get a blowout number, I think we are currently in a situation where good news is good news and bad news is bad news. So if we have a good number, I would expect risk assets to rally, because it would just kind of, blow a breath of fresh air into the, into the markets and kind of brush away these initial recessionary fears. And if it's a negative number, I would expect the trend to continue. Again, just by looking at this, you could easily say, "Oh, maybe this is a bear flag on the S&P." Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter on the technicals. Again, it matters what comes out tomorrow. It could easily be a major bottom. Okay, as I said, if the numbers come out in a positive fashion, well, you could easily see it go back up by quite a bit. It could also be short-lived because of, again, what we're seeing in politics. You see, some spokesperson come out, or Donald Trump wakes up in the middle of the night, he tweets something, and everything tanks again. That's sadly the world we're living in right now. And if the number is a miss, well, yeah, I mean, it could easily go lower. It could easily go towards the 5670 level. So again, I just wanted to make the point that as of now, if you whether we like it or not, it's a matter of looking at the data, how it comes out, and reassessing every time anyone in politics speaks out, and again looking at the data. So again, tomorrow we have Nonfarm Payrolls. This is how again the data came out this week. I think I'll leave it at that. If you like this kind of content, consider leaving a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye.